And oh yeah, thank you for recording. So let's just take a moment to center ourselves. We do this ever since we've started being on Zoom, where we just take a moment to breathe together. Let's all breathe in and out. We are real bodies, not just computer things on the computer. Breathe in and out. And from this more centered place, I do want to acknowledge that we live on the land of the Ho-Chunk Nation and remind us that in 1832, the Ho-Chunk were forced to cede this territory, this land that they called Dejope. But despite decades of forcing people, the federal government and the state government forcing people to leave this land, some Ho-Chunk people remain, some walked all the way back here and live here today. I also want to acknowledge that Wisconsin is home to many Native peoples, including the Menominee, the Ojibwe, the Potawatomi, the Oneida, and others. I'll take the next slide, Susan. Okay, so today I'm really excited. In just a minute, I'll be turning over to Alex Peterson, who's going to introduce Scott, who's going to speak about conservatives and clean energy, opportunities for bipartisan progress. We have chance for Q&A with the speaker, and then we'll give some updates. We have lots of different teams. I want to give a welcome to all the newcomers and welcome you now, but we'll also have updates about what the different teams are doing. I work with the monthly meeting team, as you might guess, and we'll have a poll. A little curious about what you think about hybrid. And then sometime after 8, we will welcome the newcomers, and we like to end early so we can have optional breakouts. We'll have more Q&A with the speaker and a special breakout on the line 5 work. So that's an overview of the evening. I think the next slide, I think I now turn it over to Alex with the state policy team. Yeah, you can take the slides down, Susan. Alex is a relatively new member of the state policy team, which I think is our newest team. Take it away, Alex.
Thanks, Julia. Hi, everybody. My name is Alex Peterson, for those of you who haven't met me. I'm like Julia was saying, I'm a relatively new member to the state policy team. I joined in November of last year, and just an introduction to the state policy team for those of you who aren't familiar with what we're doing. Basically we work with legislatures in Wisconsin, primarily, around Madison, but, we're looking to expand statewide, as the now 350 Wisconsin moniker would indicate, to try to, influence legislatures to consider climate-friendly policies, whether that's in, in building codes or renewable energy, like some of the topics we're talking about today, and in whatever way possible. And so, considering the political makeup of Wisconsin, I thought it would be great to invite, Scott, coming from the Conservative Energy Forum, Scott Coenen. He's the executive director of the Wisconsin Conservative Energy Forum, which is a group dedicated to advancing a conservative vision for clean and renewable energy in Wisconsin. Scott is dedicated to educating and informing conservative leaders about all of the above energy strategy that includes emerging clean energies, advancing a conservative and pragmatic vision to renewable energy future. And I think based on Wisconsin's political makeup, like I was saying, having a bipartisan buy-in for renewable energy is really important. And so I think Scott can provide a good perspective on the conservative arguments and what motivates conservatives to support renewable energy policy. So with that, I'll pass it off to Scott, and he can begin his presentation. Scott, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, Alex, Julia, thank you. I really appreciate it, and I appreciate the audience from everybody here. I like doing the virtual stuff. I confess I'd like to do it in person because I like shaking hands and meeting people. But this is as convenient, I think, as it can get for everybody, right? Which is good. So I will try as hard as I can Not to bore you guys too much with this stuff, but I'm a big data guy. I'm a numbers guy. I'm also a big visualization kind of person. So we'll go through a couple of charts, do that kind of thing. But mostly I am interested in Q&A with you, and mostly I'm interested in talking with you folks about the overarching goal that I have for this organization, for what I see as could be a possible future for clean energy or energy discussions, even discussions around climate and the environment. I started my career in politics about 10 years ago, longer than 10 years ago. I was a college Republican through my years at UW-Whitewater. Came over from Whitewater, started working as a staff person here in the Capitol in Madison, ran some campaigns across the state, did all that. Excuse me. It was about 2016 or whereabouts when I started to burn out on that stuff a little bit, and started to grow a little bit more frustrated myself with the drift of political debate in the United States of America, period. And in the state of Wisconsin. So I wanted to try to put together an organization and seize on an issue where I thought maybe things are changing on the ground. The technology is changing, the reality, the markets, like the facts and the figures that underlie the political debate are changing. And I hope and pray that that can change the political debate that we have been having, because it's not one that I view as particularly productive, or one that I think is helpful for any side at this point in time. So just to get started, I'll introduce our organization a little bit and kind of roll through some of the things that I think. And then I said most of what I'd like to do is just talk with you guys and bounce some ideas off of you a little bit. So give me 1 second here and I will. Is that working for everyone? Perfect. So this is the organization that I put together. Put together a good group of solid conservatives. Obviously, everybody kind of recognizes Tommy Thompson's name on there, but there are some other names here that I think you probably will know as well. Benji Backer, who has been doing a tremendous amount of work, particularly on the climate front at the national level with the American Conservation Coalition. Jeff Stone's a former state representative and worked with the Public Service Commission as well. Matt Newman owns Newman Companies as well as Sunvest Solar out of Waukesha, Southeast Wisconsin. So some really well-connected conservative folks who can argue, who can make a conservative argument, a credible conservative argument to a skeptical audience, typically on these issues, but one that we share values with the audience, right? Which is becoming increasingly important in our politics. That we know we have to know in our politics now where a person is coming from and what information they're giving. If they're on our team or they're not on our team, it makes a big difference to people's receptiveness to things, right? So this is a straight up conservative organization. Our approach, I think, won't shock anybody, and it'll be fairly similar to you. It will be something that I think you've heard before. I want to be the conservative voice for energy policy discussions. I want to have a seat at the table in the discussions that we are having. And at the end of the day, I really want to expand what I think are conservative definitions of responsible resource development. And I think there's a very, very real willingness on the right side of the aisle to understand that the modern world needs resource development in responsible ways, but they don't particularly right now extend that understanding to new technologies like electric vehicles, like solar, wind, et cetera, battery storage. So I really focus on kind of that all of the above, but I recognize that there is a division that exists over clean energy specifically, right? So how do we get across to folks on the right that sustainability is a bottom line value for companies, increasingly for companies in the United States, but also for us as individuals, as a state, us as households. Sustainability is an important thing. And our principles are fairly simple. Is the technology that we're talking about market driven? Is it cost effective? Is it reliable to some degree? Is it homegrown, both in our state, in our country, and even sometimes on our roofs or in our own backyard? And can we use it as a diverse resource? So that essentially is applying conservative principles to what I see are changing market dynamics, at the bottom line. So that's kind of my conservative case for things, right? I don't particularly at this point, especially on the policy front, We don't particularly talk or advocate for subsidies any longer. Recognize that renewable and clean energy are typically at the low end of the cost structure in energy markets now, which is a big change from 10 years ago and something that should change the way we discuss this issue. I don't particularly talk about mandates any longer either. People talk a lot about renewable portfolio standards, things like that. I think those are the policies of the past that have brought us to this moment, but they're probably not the policies that are best suited to push us forward. I do talk about falling price. I talk about versatility, rural economic development, business and consumer choice is huge in this space. And grid diversity and national security. I would love to talk with you guys about what is happening in Eastern Europe and globally right now, and why clean energy, and particularly I think renewables and electric vehicles, are going to play such a critical role on the national security front for Europe and North America over the next 15 years. I would love to talk more about that. We could probably talk forever about it. But at the end of the day, what I recognize, markets are changing and our reasons for supporting clean energy can change too. You'll notice I skipped over climate there. I don't see climate change as an emerging passion right of center. And I don't see it as an emerging pressure point for conservative voters yet. I know there's been a lot of talk about whether or not that's changing right of center, whether people are starting to come along to see climate change as an issue. I think that climate is still not a unifier in this space. And I know that you guys are probably not the right group for this message necessarily, but the difference from left and right on climate change, passion, intensity, priority is so wide and so huge that it is almost, it is extremely difficult as somebody who tries to straddle those two sides as much as I can. That is the biggest difference that we have in this country, one of the biggest differences. And I don't see that changing right now, right of center. We can talk a little bit more about this, and I'm sure you guys are interested. I think that younger conservative voters, I'm 32 years old, folks in my cohort, my age cohort, I think see this as an issue, absolutely, and kind of recognize it as an issue that needs to be tackled going forward. However, that still doesn't necessarily mean that it's number one on the priority list for voters right of center, right? I mean, you can kind of see this is just a Pew poll, but things have not changed dramatically in the last 5 or 10 years. And I think that there are some hopes that it has changed, but I don't see that bearing out in the conversations that I have across the state, and I don't see that bearing out in the numbers yet. So what do we do? And as an organization, I try really, really hard to connect on a local level with legislators and activists right of center. I believe that the easiest and best, most effective way to talk to folks about this stuff is to literally get into their districts and into their backyards and show them how renewable energy is changing and working for their constituents and their citizens. So it involves a lot of hands-on education, Republicans and local decision makers in particular. And at the end of the day, I'm trying as hard as I can to find policy that can appeal to both sides of the aisle, that can check some boxes, recognizing that in this space, if you're finding pragmatic middle ground solutions to things, it's almost going to make everybody mad at this point, right? Recognizing the reality of our politics right now. So this is just a brief little, I'm sure you guys are familiar with this. This is what Wisconsin's energy mix looks like in 2020. We are a fair amount behind all of our Midwest states. We are behind quite a few states across the country. I tell conservative audiences often, the biggest states in the United States of America for renewable energy, Texas, Oklahoma, Nebraska, the Dakotas, Iowa, all red states, all deep conservative, very, very red states where they have an increasing share of renewable energy penetration. And Texas is the #1 renewable energy. It could be a country on its own right now for how much renewable energy they're building in Texas. It's unbelievable. We are not there yet. However, I think the good thing is obviously there's been a significant change of the landscape in the cost structure of these technologies. They are blowing coal power out of the water. Nobody's going to be building a coal power plant at these prices in the United States of America ever again. It's not going to happen. Natural gas, wind, and solar, and increasingly battery storage paired with wind and solar are the most competitive economic sources for us, period. So that's leading into this. This is what the next 5 to 6 years looks like for the state of Wisconsin, projects that will be built in Wisconsin. 8,000 megawatts of solar, 2,500 megawatts of battery storage, wind. You can even see solar and batteries specifically paired together on individual projects. And that 12 megawatts of gas, I'm going to guarantee you guys at $7 an MMBTU, that gas is probably not going to be built anymore, right? Given what's happening in natural gas markets globally. Wisconsin's energy market has never looked like this, ever. No matter the action at the federal level, no matter renewable portfolio standard at the state level, no matter any of the kind of policies that we've pursued in the past, there has never been this rush of building into the state of Wisconsin. This is billions, $8 billion maybe worth of investment in the state of Wisconsin in just the next 5 to 6 years. To give you an idea on these numbers, if all of this gets built, you're probably looking at solar representing 20 to 25% of Wisconsin's energy share, again, within the next decade, solar alone. So these are really, really huge and significant changes. And I will tell everyone, not a lot of people who aren't following this specifically, and the number of people who follow energy policy, even just, for climate change reasons, is pretty small. It's a small niche group. So I give you guys credit for following this stuff so closely, because you're the one of the 1% on this issue. And this is what all the projects across the state that we're currently tracking, all the counties that have projects in the state of Wisconsin. When I say rural economic development, I mean it. This is going to be billions and billions of dollars that goes exclusively to zip codes that are extremely, extremely rural. It's going to go to farmers. It's going to go to rural landowners. It's going to go to rural communities. Wisconsin stands to benefit tremendously from this stuff. And I'll touch on it for a second, just from a conservative point of view. I like the utility scale renewable energy development. I think that's really, really cool. Some of the stuff that I'm more excited about as a conservative is the independence factor of renewable energy. I don't think I have to sell you guys on this, obviously, but I think one of the things that people are struggling to think about often, and this is particularly true of right of center audiences who, again, don't spend all day thinking about, renewable energy and, carbon-free technologies, that kind of thing. Batteries and solar panels specifically, they scale all the way up. You can put 1 million panels in farm fields, absolutely. But they also scale all the way down. You can put one solar panel on a shed in your backyard, right? And that kind of versatility with power production is not something that we have really ever had in the modern world. I'm really, really excited about the implications for me as a household, me as a business owner, me as an individual, being able to harness my own energy production and use. Not necessarily saying that I will be off grid. Maybe someday, I hope so. But the technologies lead to an independence level that we've never been able to take advantage of before. I will share a story that I love. The new all-electric Ford F-150, right? Ford has made a big deal about this. They're marketing it. They're about to sell a bunch of them. The new Ford F-150, Ford will sell you, I think the price point on it is a $3,900 system. So $4,000, you buy the all-electric F-150. $4,000, you work with Sunrun, who is a large national solar contractor, and they will put a system in your garage that both charges the truck and allows the truck to power your home. So the power goes both ways. And Ford thinks you can get the average use of a home for 3 days just based off of a fully charged F-150 sitting in your garage. The implications of that kind of technology to national security, to independence, that should appeal naturally to a conservative audience. And I think it really, really does. But there's not a lot of people out there getting that message across to conservative audiences. But thinking through the implications of that kind of technology it's just awesome. And it will be so, so powerful for the United States if we can actually take advantage of this stuff. I will say, clean energy is broadly popular, right? These are from, this is from a national survey that we put together. Even on the right, even right of center voters they list this as a somewhat important priority, clean energy. They want to see more innovation. They want to see new technologies. Solar, wind, renewable energy, and clean energy is very well packaged and it's very well marketed to folks, I think. So it's broadly popular. I will say conservative policy is what is actually popular here as well. Allowing approaches that are typically advanced by left of center politicians that involve mandates, that involve subsidies or tax credits, that involve banning, certain technologies or certain fuel sources. They're just not, they don't poll that popularly. And I don't get the feeling that they're that popular with center right, or even center left voters. Approaches that allow consumer choice and competition, allow markets to flourish. It tests better, and it's a lot more popular with right of center voters in particular. So I try as hard as I can to tell our leaders, conservative and Republican leaders in the state of Wisconsin, you have an opportunity here. The technologies are popular, broadly popular. Swing voters in particular love this stuff. Seize on the technologies and use good, conservative, market-oriented policy that pushes them forward. That's the way forward for folks. So not a popular message, I understand that. At the end of the day, I really urge folks on the right to treat renewable energy as if they are disruptive technologies. There are legitimate questions that need answering with these technologies. In an energy transition like this, there absolutely are hiccups, there are problems, there are solutions, there's opportunities, there's also pitfalls. These technologies come onto the market, and it isn't all or nothing, right? It's not all good, it's not all bad, but we need to work for policy that tries as much as possible to extenuate and take advantage of the opportunities and try and suppress the costs as much as possible. So I think the way forward politically here in a divided state obviously involves some degree of compromise. And I would really love to talk with you guys more about this, because I see, I don't want to put words in anybody's mouth, but the kind of policy that's going to come from the Republican legislature in this state, you're probably going to look at that as a half measure, right? It's not going to be fast enough. It's not going to be enough for you. It's really, you could say they're just pretending to care about it. I've heard a lot of these things in the last 6 to 7 months, and it's dejecting to me to some degree, because it's difficult. And I think there's not an appreciation for some folks that right of center, there isn't a constituency for this stuff yet. Really, we're trying to build a constituency around these issues, but there is no natural voter right of center that really, really cares about clean energy, or really, really cares about climate change. So Republican legislators who step out on this stuff and lead on clean energy and conservative clean energy policy, they're really sticking their neck out to some degree. And we can talk a little bit more about that if you're interested, but that entails some degree of risk for Republican legislators who are increasingly getting burned by base conservative voters, particularly on some issues like this. So it's important, I think, to meet people where they are on the issue. You have to speak to different values on this stuff. There's just a wide gulf over motivations behind these things. And at the end of the day, I really think we have to be realistic, recognize the challenges, push for solutions. But in Wisconsin specifically, it doesn't matter if you're conservative or liberal, our policies are outdated, and we are losing the race for this stuff. And if Wisconsin loses the race, it probably doesn't bode well for the United States either. So I just wanted to touch for 1 second on all of the different policy that we have introduced in the last session. Obviously, the legislative session in Madison is over now. However, this represents probably some of the most aggressive renewable and clean energy reform introduced in the state of Wisconsin in the last decade. And these are all conservatives. These are all Republicans on this list. Community solar would be a huge deal for the state of Wisconsin. Third-party financing of distributed solar generation has been murky and possibly illegal in the state for 10, 15, 20 years. There have been court cases over it. People have been wrangling about it. It is a major impediment to the introduction of more solar, especially on rooftops in our state. Republicans led on that bill to legalize it this year. A battery storage sales tax exemption at all levels to try and incentivize a little bit and not penalize through tax policy the uptake of battery storage as technology. Pollinator friendly and ag friendly utility scale solar design. Electric vehicle sales. People don't really realize it, but one of the major impediments to the electric vehicle market in the state of Wisconsin is that some of the biggest electric vehicle companies in the whole country can't sell their vehicles directly in the state of Wisconsin. You have to drive to Illinois, you have to drive to Minneapolis, to Minnesota to buy a Tesla, to buy an electric vehicle. That needs to be legal right now, right? And that to me is a consumer choice and market-friendly reform that we can make right now to try and help the EV market, led by Republicans. So you can look at this list up and down a little bit, but I think this represents progress. And I think progress was slow. It is slow. It is hard to bridge the partisan gap that exists here. I recognize that 100%, but we are getting there to some degree. But I think what I really would like to drive home to everybody, compromise requires both sides giving up something, right? Again, nobody will be 100% happy in these situations. And that's where I think actually really good policy is found. If you're making maybe the extremes on both left and right mad about something, you've probably found something that really actually makes sense. So with that, I won't talk anymore. I'm sorry that I talked for as long as I did. But I'd love some questions and I would love to get into it a little bit with you guys and talk about this stuff.
Thanks a lot, Scott. I appreciate you taking the time to give that presentation to us. There's a lot of questions in the chat. I can read some off if that's the preferred format for everybody. I guess I think that's fine for now. If someone has a question they would like to ask Scott, you can also raise your hand too, and I can call on you. But for now, two questions that are from the same person that I'll read off. So the first one is, have you looked at Republicans 35 and under, and what does the chart look like for their opinions on the climate change? And to follow up, this second question, do you try to educate staff at Wisconsin manufacturers and other commercial entities about these issues? And why do some of them not support clean energy businesses like microgrid companies such as Entech Solutions?
I'll take the young people question first here, because I like that. I like talking about it. I think that there is definitely a shift, and there's a wide gulf on right of center between those that are 65 and older and those that are under 35. Totally, it is a different. There are difference. There's a ton of differences there. Climate change is one of them. Climate change is not a controversial thing, I think, for any of my friends, whether they're right of center or left of center or whatever else. And that bears in the polling. It's not a controversial thing. Like it doesn't exist. It's a Chinese hoax. That's not something I think that younger voters right of center think any longer. But the difference again is it's still not a high priority item. Like if I were to ask, we see it in the polling, there are other things that rise higher. You see climate change as maybe like a number 8 or a number 7, 9 on a list of priority voting, which I know can probably sound maybe a little bit crazy to everybody here that, you guys have a real passion for it, but there's a mismatch between the priorities left and right, even at a younger age, even those that are 35 and under. So that's what I've seen bared out in my conversations across the state, and it bears out somewhat in the data too, if you look at the polling data. Other question was manufacturers and commerce. Yeah,
so I guess I'll just ask a personal follow-up question to you on that first, and then get back to the second question. But sorry to weird order there, but what do you think it would take for conservatives, especially young conservatives, to make that climate change be a higher priority, just given the data that's out there and the potential imminent consequences of the climate crisis? I mean, at least in the opinion of people here, what would need to happen, I guess, for people, right of center voters for it to be a number 1 or number 2 or whatever priority?
I don't know. And my answer is honest. I have no idea. And that's not, I'm not disparaging anybody. And I sorry if that's probably not a very optimistic answer, but I have no clue. I think the way forward, honestly, is to try and combine the openness that younger voters have, the open-mindedness on these issues and these technologies and innovation specifically, and try and match it to their other priorities, right? And try it. So the last 2 or 3 months, people have been talking about Russia, Ukraine, Eastern Europe, national security shot up the list for all the voters, right, as a priority. Use clean energy and match it, right? Match it to the moment as much as you possibly can. And I understand the focus on climate change as the impetus for this, because that's where I see a lot of the drive. That's where I see a lot of the drive for time issues, right? Like, I think that's, people focus on climate change as the reason for, supporting clean energy, because that's where the real impetus for urgency comes on the issue. I don't have a good answer around a lot of that, but I think it just, you have to involve other priorities to try and raise it up as an overall issue, right?
Gotcha. Okay, thank you. So the second question that this commenter had was, do you try to educate staff at manufacturers and other commercial entities about clean energy, and why do not some businesses not support places like micro companies like Tech Solutions?
I think that's changing, and it's changed significantly even in like the last 2 or 3 years. So we were just up at Bergstrom Auto in Appleton, Neenah. I think this one was in Neenah, actually. And Tech had just put in an off-grid EV charger that had battery storage and solar attached to the EV charger, all on site for Bergstrom. And we brought like 5 legislators there, because there's a bunch in that area, right? And Bergstrom was ecstatic about how that went, right? They were getting people showing up in their yard just to charge their EV. They've got a big billboard on 41 going north as you're driving. Like, I think that to some degree is changing a little bit, but there's a chicken and egg problem in the state of Wisconsin right now. We don't have, our policies are really, really poor, and they don't encourage, they actually discourage companies and individuals using these technologies at the individual level, right? So some businesses, and I get this to some degree, some businesses just don't want to waste time or limited, bandwidth on this issue, because they don't even have the opportunity to utilize solar on site, right? Like, there's a very limited opportunity just given the policies and the regulations that we have in the state. So there's this weird dynamic where we would be in a much, much better place if our policies were better, because then I think that you would see tons of businesses, particularly manufacturers, starting to take advantage of this stuff wholesale. But they can't take advantage of it because the policies aren't there. So they don't really read onto the issue with urgency, because there's not an opportunity for them in state. Very, very frustrating. I don't know how to fix that log jam. We've been trying as much as we can to bring the Kohlers and the SG Johnsons and the Generacs of the world, who have a real, Generac is going to make so much money on renewable, on solar and storage in particular, over the next 10, 15, 20 years. They're leaning heavily into that business. It's going to be a huge advantage for the state of Wisconsin, but we have to work on them getting a little bit more vocal about it. So I don't have an answer for that one either, guys. Sorry.
Well, we have time for a couple more questions, but there's a bunch of questions in the chat. So Scott, I don't know what your availability is for more Q&A after our other things in the agenda. I don't know if that's a possibility, but if people
I would love to hang around. Absolutely. Yep.
Okay.
100%.
Yeah, I'm available all night. So, I'm, but yeah, a couple more questions before we have to move on to the other agenda items. Just a straightforward question here is, why is climate change a political issue at all?
I have my own answers to that, right? And I have my own perspective on it. I would ask everybody, I've seen the videos of Nancy Pelosi and Newt Gingrich sitting on a couch together, talking about how, there were bipartisan solutions to climate change, right? Like that 25, 30 years ago, I don't know how long ago that was, but it seems like a different world, right? I have my points in history where I think if somebody had been able to do it differently, maybe they would have. And one of those things, and I'll just point to the crowd here, if you have to go back in time, was Al Gore an inconvenient truth? Was Al Gore the right spokesperson for this issue, or the person who needed to elevate this issue back then? It's just one of those things that I think, like, maybe hindsight 2020, maybe there were mistakes that were made along the way. and we can talk all day long about, Koch brothers and fossil fuel interests, how, they have maybe a particularly receptive audience right of center, that kind of thing. But I think that climate change seemed to be uniquely, at least in my opinion, last 15 years, seems to be uniquely susceptible to the overall division and parting of the sea that has taken place in our politics, right? Like I maybe the only other issue out there that's moved in the opposite direction is criminal justice reform. And obviously some things have changed there even in the last few months, right? So I think the list of issues where the two parties have come together in the last 20 years, what does that look like? I mean, is there a list of those issues? Does it exist at all? So to some degree, I think maybe climate change was a victim of the overall, political environment. But it seems to have maybe been worse than others, if you're taking your priority and issue list.
Yeah, it's just a politicization of everything, I guess. So then another question here is, does your organization have a stance on environmental issues and specifically environmental justice issues, or is that not something you touch on?
I don't spend a lot of time talking about it, to be totally honest with you. I think I've always taken the belief that, like, first things are first, right? I have to figure out how to get folks to be open-minded on the technology itself, right? And to be open-minded on the number one priority, which is the utilization of those technologies and seeing more renewable and clean energy onto Wisconsin's grid, no matter how I can get it there. And that's kind of my sole focus, because I don't think that sale is final yet for a lot of people. So that's first things first for me. I will say, not on environmental justice. On the environment, when I travel the state, I don't spend a lot of time talking climate. I really don't. But I do spend time having people ask me about water quality issues, basically everywhere, whether I'm talking in an urban setting, rural setting, even more, actually. There is concern that is shared across everybody over water quality issues. So that's something, I don't build it into my presentation, but people ask me about it all the time. So very interesting thing there.
Yeah, well, it's maybe a more tangible thing. People can really experience water quality issues more easily than, kind of an amorphous climate change. Sarah, I see you have a question. Unfortunately, we have to move on to the next segment, but if people want to stick around and talk to Scott afterwards, I'll be around, and Scott is, being generous at this time, willing to stick around too. So, thanks for all your questions in the chat. We'll try to address as many as we can afterwards. But Julia, I'll pass it back on to you for the rest of the meeting. Thanks again, Scott, for your presentation. Really appreciate you being generous with your time tonight.
Thank you, guys. I look forward to talking after, and I hope you thought it was worthwhile. So thank you, guys.
Thank you very much, Scott, and thank you, Alex, for having for bringing this forward. We do want to share some of the things that our different teams are doing, and then we'll go back into breakouts with the speaker, and we have some other breakouts, including a welcome for newcomers. So next slide, Susan. I'm starting off with you, Emily.
Hi, everybody. I think I know a lot of you here, but I'm Emily. I am the head of the communication team. Just a couple of announcements. 350 Wisconsin now has a LinkedIn page that is something that's come up just in the last few weeks. So I think someone's going to pop that into the chat, or if you go to LinkedIn and just search for 350 Wisconsin, you'll find us. So if you work with 350 Wisconsin as a volunteer, you can actually list volunteer experience on your LinkedIn profile. So if you're someone who's still working and you think maybe later this will be good for a job hunt or whatever, definitely list us. If you need help figuring out how to list 350 Wisconsin as official volunteer experience, just let me know. At this point, all of our social media handles have been switched over to 350 Wisconsin. So it's 350.wisconsin on Facebook and Instagram, and then just 350 Wisconsin on Twitter. If you already followed us when we were 350 Madison, then you don't have to do anything else. No changes needed. In terms of volunteer needs, we are in desperate need of someone who has expertise with Google Analytics and also search engine optimization. So if that's something that you are knowledgeable about, please let me know. I will put my email in the chat in just a minute. And then we're always looking for people to help us out with social media. So whatever social media platform you like best, just reach out and let me know. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Emily. And now we're going to turn to the Community Climate Solutions team. Julia, are you in the house?
I am here. Hi, everyone. My name is Julia De Palma. I am one of 3 co-leads of the Community Climate Solutions team. Just a couple things to talk to everyone about tonight. First off, we have a new blog post up on 350 Wisconsin's website. If you are not aware, Madison is on the verge of releasing its new sustainability plan. One of our members went through the old plan that was released in 2011 and did a pretty great deep dive about how the city can improve things with its new sustainability plan when it releases it. We have a new community working group. We are so excited to welcome La Crosse County to our community working groups in the Community Climate Solutions team. This is our first one outside of Dane County. Another celebration in Madison, the bus rapid transit system has secured enough funding from the federal government to be fully electrified, which we are so happy to hear about. And then just a couple of upcoming events. So Thursday, May 19th is our monthly Community Climate Solutions team meeting. It's at 5 p.m. via Zoom. And then next week, the Middleton Community Working Group will be hosting an event called Solving the Climate Crisis. It's on May 12th at Middleton Public Library. They will begin tabling at 6 p.m. and then a presentation will begin at 6:30 p.m. with Bob Lindmeyer. He is a meteorologist at WKOW. So really hearing science-based facts about the climate crisis. Thank you for your time. I'll put my email in the chat. If anyone's interested, feel free to reach out.
Thank you, Julia. Okay, Stephanie, tell us about pizza.
Hi, everybody. It's great to see you tonight. I'm 350 Wisconsin's Development Director, and I'm excited to tell you about a fun event we have this week. It's a benefit night with Ian's Pizza at Garver Feed Mill. And it's Wednesday night from 5 to 9 p.m. A lot of us are going to be there, staff, board members, volunteers. So it'll be a nice opportunity to socialize. We would love it if you would go to our Facebook event and let us know you're coming, and also share this out with your networks, because the percentage that is donated by Ian's back to 350 Wisconsin is based on the number of flyers we show. So the number of orders that we have gets us a higher percentage. The maximum is 25%. So we'll hope to see you on Wednesday night. Thanks, everyone.
That's great, Stephanie. I was planning to show up without showing a flyer, so maybe you can put in the chat if I'm misunderstanding.
Well, you could actually even just take a picture of this flyer here, or we've also sent it out in email blasts. It's basically, you can just show it on your phone. You don't have to actually have the paper. And then if you want to order for curbside pickup, you just have to mention 350 Wisconsin. The flyer actually tells you the different ways that you can participate in the fundraiser. And just to note, they also will deliver to Madison's East Side and Monona.
Oh, I want to go and see all you guys, but I'll make sure I do it in a way that raises money too. Okay, Tanis is going to tell us about what's going to happen next month.
Yes, so hi everybody. Thank you, Julia. I'm Tanis Madison. I'm the board vice president, and I'm just going to tell you a little bit about next month's monthly member meeting, which also happens to be our annual meeting. So every year, some of you may recall, we elect board members and coordinating council members at our June annual meeting. Usually we do it just as part of a regular monthly meeting. We, get the voting out of the way quickly and then go on to a featured speaker and all the normal stuff. But this year we have recently made, and we are still in the process of making, a number of very big and exciting changes to our organization, how we operate, what we're focusing on. And so we are devoting the entire meeting next month to discussing those things. So if we could, let's see, am I doing the slides myself or could some, thank you. So these are some of the things we're going to be talking about next week: revised vision and mission statements, some new principles or theories of change, how we're centering climate justice and learning how to center it in everything we do. As has been mentioned, we are expanding statewide. So what is that going to mean for us? We want to ensure the effectiveness of our teams. You see our campaign teams there listed. We want to get feedback on that. And we'll have some new areas for involvement. And then if you could go to the next slide, please. We also have some more, I guess I would say, internal operational type changes. We've been lucky enough to add some staff, increase the time of some of our existing staff. We have some changes in fundraising and in our goals and needs. We want to talk to you about those. And we are very exciting. We are creating a 501c4 organization separate from 350 Wisconsin to do more political and election related work. So then next slide, please. So yes, and then as I mentioned, we will also be voting. You'll get to meet the candidates for the board. Some are new, some are returning. The members of the coordinating council, and you'll vote through Zoom. And there's a list, the link, I think, to this list of eligible voters will be put in the chat. And so we have two criteria for which enable you to vote. You can either have donated at least $5 prior to April 22nd this year, or you have to have attended 3 monthly meetings. And so if you didn't donate any money, but you'd still like to vote, there's an email address too that will be put in the chat, coordinator@350madison.org, and you can email that email address and we will add you to the list if you've attended at least 3 monthly meetings. And I think there's one more slide, maybe, Julia. Oh, yep. Hope to see you then. Thank you. It should be fun, exciting, and interactive meeting. So thank you.
I thank you, Tanis. I hope to see everyone in a month. Next slide, I think, is me. I'm speaking. Oh, now I've got my slides out of order. There we go. The Divest and Defund team, and with help from the Art Collective, we just want to let you know we won't maybe do something quite as big as the pictures you saw at the beginning, the Stay Alive, but we are having ongoing actions. And stay tuned for details. It's going to be Saturday, May 21st and Saturday, June 18th. You can contact me, or you can contact divest.defund. You also can just sort of stay tuned. We'll send things out to the whole list. Just wanted to give you a preview. Next slide. Phyllis, lead of our trans team.
Yes, I'm so glad to be here. I'm so excited that we're reaching out to invite speakers and others from a broad political range, and I learned a lot from Scott's talk. I'm the co-lead of the Joint Tar Sands team of 350 Wisconsin and the Wisconsin chapter of the Sierra Club. I think that's a pretty unusual setup, but it works really well. On April 15th, we finished a 4-month whirlwind of effort to get as many people as possible to comment to the Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources on Enbridge's Line 5 expansion. And here you see the total on the left of what our 30 volunteers and me did in a 14-shift phone bank to supporters. And when you combine those who agreed to submit a comment and those who received a voicemail telling them how to do it, we reached 1,635 people. On the right, you see the results of our tabling efforts, 933. The action pages of Sierra Club and 350 Madison together were 3,190. And so the total that we know about, and there are probably some hundreds more that we don't, is 4,123. So I want to say thanks to all the volunteers who got past their shyness because they believe in this cause. And I'll quote one phone banker who said, "Phyllis, I'm hooked. I first signed up to Phone Bank because I really want us to win this fight against Line 5, not at all because I relished talking to potentially unreceptive strangers. But after 2 sessions, I realized I have really enjoyed talking to these real people," unquote. So now that we're not collecting comments anymore, we are collecting signatures to our petition to Governor Evers and the DNR. And if you're new and you haven't signed this yet, please go to tinyurl.com/petitionline5 and do so. And I will put that in at the end of my comments here. We already handed in 1,500 in January, and we hope to do another public delivery of signed petitions this summer. Next one, please. So I'm really excited to share with you an event that I hope many of you will attend. As you can see, it's the weekend of June 25th and 26th. It's a chance to meet the Ashland area people, Indigenous and non-Indigenous, who are working so hard to save their land and water. There are so many aspects to this day-long event, from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. or likely later, that I couldn't fit them all on the slide. But if you go to tinyurl.com/unitedbywater, you will find it all. One of the bands playing will be Beat Road, starring Tar Sands team's own Mark Rosenthal. And on Sunday, we hope to have a big crew of volunteers for a 2-hour highway cleanup, ending with a picnic at Copper Falls State Park, one of the many iconic places endangered by the Line 5 expansion. And it's one way to show our appreciation for all that the local people have done over the decades to protect Lake Superior, which contains 1/10 of the world's surface fresh water. And another way to donate is to donate a gift to the gifting ceremony that's being held to honor the late Joe Rose, an Anishinaabe elder who led many fights against harmful industrial projects like CAFOs and mines. He passed away from complications of COVID in February 2021. So people will be bringing handmade gifts, which the Rose family will give to water protectors. And even if you can't come, you can send up a gift with one of us going, made by you if you are crafty, or by a local craftsperson if you are not, and it will be much appreciated. And if you're wondering how you might get there and where you might stay, we have a Google form to facilitate carpooling and a lodging possibilities sheet on Google. And we've reserved a total of 29 hotel rooms that you can reserve and pay for yourself. And they're only held for us until 4 p.m. on May 23rd, and they may go very soon. So if you know you want to go, I suggest you reserve one soon. There are also casino lodges at the Bad River Reservation and the Red Cliff Reservation, where we have not yet reserved a block, but we hope to. And camping is also available, but I have not found any camping spaces where you can reserve that are nearby. And now that I'm done, I'm just going to say the tiny URLs for people who are on the phone, and then I'll put them in the chat for the rest of you. So for lodging, it's tinyurl.com/ashlandlodging. For carpool, it's tinyurl.com/ashlandcarpoolform. And for info on the June weekend, it's tinyurl.com/unitedbywater. Thank you.
Thank you, Phyllis. That all sounds great. Okay, we're transitioning to two or three closing things. One is, in case you haven't figured it out yet, we do a lot of work in teams. If you're new or not so new, and you want to join a team, all you have to do is email the person who gives out the Zoom link. They'd be happy to have you join them. So you can see we have Tar Sands, Climate Justice, Communication Action, and Divest and Defund all meet on Monday nights. And next slide, There are other teams, the Community Climate Solutions, the Art Collective, fundraising, our own little monthly meeting team, and the state policy team, which brought you tonight's wonderful speaker with Scott. We also, so I think that's it in terms of what I was going to do. I'm going to tell you that, as you know, next month, we're going to have our annual meeting. Now, I'm going to give you a clue. We're not meeting on July 4th. We meet every first Monday, but not July 4th. We will be meeting the second Monday in July. And this is for those who can drive to Madison. We're having a picnic at Brittingham Park, and we'll not have a virtual meeting that time. Now, I think I would like to bring up the poll before we do the breakout rooms. Susan, I think the poll can just be on top. Can you bring up the poll, Marion?
Can you see it?
I can't. Can other people see it?
Yes.
Oh, good. Maybe because I'm a host. This is a poll where you have to, it's 5 questions, so you scroll down. It's about whether we want feedback from you on hybrid meetings. I'll just say we don't know exactly how it would work, but imagine that the in-person part would be in Madison, perhaps in our old, where we used to meet, Quaker Meeting House, which has a new ventilation system and a mask requirement. And then answer the questions in the poll. Since it's 5 questions, we'll give you a few minutes.
Where is the poll? I don't see it.
Okay, can people see the poll?
No?
Yeah, so it might have been, it'll be a separate Zoom window. So you might have to go down to your Zoom bar and find it. It's a separate little window that should have popped up. So you might have accidentally minimized it.
So Emily, do people click on polls where it says polls?
No, that was for launching it.
Yeah, so it should be like a separate little Zoom window. So go down to whatever operating system you have where your Zoom icon is, and then hover over it, and you should be able to find it that way.
I see it. I see it.
Some people are answering. I can see that. Okay, we'll give it a few more minutes.
You also can put things in the comments in the chat. If we only gave a couple options and you have a great idea for how we should do hybrid, just throw it in the chat. We'll save all that.
Oh, yeah, we're getting close to everybody. Yep, we got everybody.
Oh, that's right. So Marion, you're gonna stop it, and then are you gonna try to share the results?
Yep, I'm going to end the poll now,
Time for that, yeah.
and then I'm going to share the results. Now you should be able to see the results. Can you see it?
Yes.
Great.
You may have to scroll through to see all of it. I can't see it, but you're gonna share it. Marion, it'll be in our Zoom poll. I can look at it later.
Okay.
Did you want to say anything about it, Marion? Or I can't see, so I can't say anything.
Right. Do you want me to summarize or?
Let's go on to our break. Does that
just
sound
so good? We'll I'm going to stop sharing right now. Okay.
Oops, go the other direction, Susan. The final slide. I think that went back rather than forward. This is the time when if you're a newcomer, you just stay. in the room. You don't join a breakout, you just hang out. And Nikki, who is our volunteer coordinator, will hang out and meet you. If you're not a newcomer, we want you to join the breakouts there. So let's see, Susan, you're going to, in a minute, Susan will launch the breakouts, and breakout 1 is Q&A with Scott, and Alex will be there to help moderate. And breakout 2 is hearing more about stopping line 5 and building that movement with Phyllis. So do you want to, so let's stop the recording, Susan, before we do anything else. Or whoever's, Mary, maybe you were doing the recording. You want to stop?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yep, I'm sorry. Mhm.